All right, 1 second here. All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. I want to thank everyone for well wishes, feeling on the mend. I wouldn't say 100%, but whatever, getting there slowly but surely. Hopefully more surely than slowly. But anyway, again, I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. So someone asked me a question a while ago. Question was, what words are considered curse words? Sometimes people hear, even rabbis say bloody hell, in other words, stuff like that. Are those considered curse words? Is that considered what we'll call nivel peh? Nivel peh means like, saying things I shouldn't say. There could be curse words. There could be just, let's say disgusting innuendos, something like that, shouldn't be talked about in public, or, in private, is one thing, but, let's say certainly in public where, there are mixed people there, or even if they're not, right? Probably a number of things, number of topics, I would say shouldn't necessarily be talked about. But so let's state the obvious. And the obvious is that words that are considered curse words, we'll state the obvious, right? Most four-letter words that we know. We're not going to go through them, but we know what curse words are. So those all should be forbidden, right? Those all should be forbidden because, it's worse than slang, right? I would say in general, maybe it's how truck drivers speak. No offense, anyone who's a truck driver, right? But I think we understand the parable. People spew off at the mouth, and it happens all the time, right? It happens at work, happens in the, all over. It's a common it's a common thing, right? Definitely a common thing. It doesn't mean, it definitely doesn't mean it's right. But if you would ask most people, and that's why it would come under one of the Noahide laws, right? One of the universal laws is that you ask most people, are you allowed to curse? It's a good thing to curse. So what would they say? They would probably say no. I would think most people would say, it's not a good thing. Or maybe people are going to say that even if it's not so bad, I wouldn't do it in front of my kids. Something like that. Kids get older, maybe it's a different issue. Right? Maybe it's a different issue. So, but if they say they wouldn't do it in front of their kids, they know it's not good. But you see, the problem is it's the way of the world. Way of the world meaning this is what people do. Right? This is common. Now, just because it's common, doesn't mean it's permissible. Now, let's say by the English, where they'll say, bloody hell, this, that. So by them, that might be worse. That might be considered a curse maybe for them. If everybody else doesn't necessarily talk that way, maybe it's not a good thing to say per se, but it doesn't necessarily mean, definitely doesn't mean necessarily it's a curse. I could say, there are issues using foul language, even language that may not be so bad, right? Let's say, may not be so bad, right? But even if it's not so bad, we always have to ask ourselves, am I a better person by doing what I'm doing right now? Does it help me in my avodas Hashem? Does it help me in serving God, or it doesn't? Now, again, if we're talking in spiritual terms, the answer is unequivocally no. No one's going to say, oh, you know what? This helps my avodas Hashem. This helps me serve God better. It's a lie, right? Well, because they're venting. They're angry. They took a hammer and smashed their thumb. So what's the first thing they do? They curse. They don't, they'll say, ouch, maybe. They'll say some other things. Even if it's not the first word that comes out of their mouths, it's probably the second, third, or fourth, right? It's in the top 5, unless someone's really got control, right? That's hard to imagine. Now, it's hard to imagine by the best of us, right? But if a person grows up around it, they hear it, they see it, on a regular basis, they saw it in the media. They saw it in the media. They see it in movies. They see it all over. They're going to say, well, how can a person not curse? What do you mean? Just because people do things doesn't mean I'm allowed to, right? Doesn't mean it's beneficial for me. 2 wrongs, 100% do not make a right over here. Now, I would venture to say that even if someone's going to tell me, words like bloody or hell, Gehenna, that's how we translate it. So a person's going to say, speak about Gehenna, isn't that cursing? It's not cursing, right? But there are certain things that we may not say, even if it depicts certain things that are okay to speak about. Maybe some people won't say it anyway. Why not? They don't want to get used to saying certain things, right? But that might be a little bit far-fetched. I mean, who's not going to say, well, after 120 years, a person's going to get judged. And when they get judged, they may have to go through a cleansing process. They may have to go to Gehenna. They may have to go to hell. Who's going to say a person shouldn't say that? I want to say because they have to be careful what they say. And they have to be so careful they don't want to have the words come out of their mouth. There's nothing wrong with saying Gehenna. But if a person is going to use the word Gehenna to curse at someone, or to say you're going to this and you're going to that, and whatever, and it's more like a curse, yeah, that I hear. That I hear 100% would be forbidden. On the other hand, maybe nothing wrong with it, right? And for most people, there shouldn't be anything wrong with it, right? But if a person, let's say, would use these words, not talking about Gehenna, right? Not mentioning Gehenna specifically. So then I hear that might be more problematic, right? Because you're using words, let's say, that should be not spoken by a ben Torah, right? But someone who keeps Torah mitzvahs. Now, someone's going to tell me, I've seen people curse. I've seen Orthodox Jews curse, right? They even cursed me, let's say. Murphy Stein's law. Let's say it happened to them. Okay. Even if it did. Even if they did, so what? And it doesn't mean what they're doing is right. I mean, I've heard my share also. So what? People get angry. They get hot under the collar. doesn't mean they have a right to say it. Remember, and this is a hard thing. This is a hard thing to keep in mind, is that when a person says something, it means they already thought about it before. It's already part of their psyche. The only question is, when's it going to come out? So someone, we mentioned this in the context of anti-Semitism. Someone makes an anti-Semitic slur. Now, sometimes people just say things to say things. Okay. Right? But sometimes people will say things and then they'll backtrack. And they'll say, oh, I shouldn't have said it. And then they have to apologize, all these different things. Right? But the reality is, why did they say it? Why did they say it? They said it because that's what they really meant. There's no such thing. Judaism does not believe that is what we call a slip of the tongue. Which means that when I say something, it's already in a person's memory. It's already in their thoughts. Now, it may never come out. It may come out 20 years later. It may come out at certain times. There are many things possibly that, could trigger it. Doesn't really matter. But the point is, it's there, right? It's buried. These things are buried in our psyches, and it shows that the soul doesn't forget, right? It's one of the good things when we get upstairs after 120 years, we're going to say, well, I don't, how much am I going to remember, in this world of what I learned, and all that. They're going to think, how much can I remember? But the soul remembers. Whatever a person learned, the soul is going to spit it back. Right? The soul is going to remember. Now, question is, how much in depth that a person learned and all that? Okay. But essentially, the soul is going to remember. Now, how do I know? Give one example. I give many examples, but I'll give one example. Right? Let's say we use either a sports parable or an entertainment parable. Let's say someone watched the movie, God forbid. They saw a movie, they saw that movie 30 years ago, 20 years ago. They haven't thought of that movie since. But then something comes up in their minds. It's, oh yeah, it reminds me of this. And then they start to quote it. Why would they do that? First of all, how do they know it's still there? You're going to say, well, that person got a phenomenal memory. Not necessarily. In other words, what we see makes an imprint on the soul. The soul doesn't forget. And, since we're body and soul together, the body can mess up the soul by all these thoughts. And it doesn't matter if the thought wasn't there for months, for years. But now a person, let's say, it's under stress. They're not feeling well, different things. And all of a sudden it brings up other memories. But you're going to say, okay, that's what they are, memories. Very good. Right? I understand the memories. Where do memories come from? There are things that we've seen, things that we've done that register and are put somewhere. It's kind of like, you take a book, a new book, it makes it into the, National Congress, whatever it is, right, for books. So it gets filed away. Now, people are going to remember the book. Doesn't matter. It gets filed somewhere. So as long as the program works well, the file is still there. It's not forgotten. The soul, we have to remember, is infinite. The soul remembers. The soul categorizes. The soul saves things in different places. Now, the only question is, okay, if it's something that we did was bad, so what do? We work hard to get rid of it. That's what we do. We work very, very hard to make sure it doesn't affect us in a negative way. So a person will say, well, maybe that's only up to a point. Because really, the feelings are still there. Okay? Very well may be true. Right? Maybe certain things never go away. Depends how we deal with it. Right? In many ways. But at the end of the day, the soul is able to, what's the word? The soul is able to, record all these different things. And even random things. Something that we may have thought or we may have saw, long time ago. You're going to say, why in the world is it coming out now? Torah's like that also. We just have to know how to recollect it. I remember during one of my first classes where, I was being tested, by a certain institution, see, if I had the ability or not or whatever. So I don't remember what the topic was, that I spoke about, but all of a sudden, they say speakers have unbelievable, heavenly help. So they recall things that they weren't necessarily brought up or thought about or whatever, in the process of speaking or preparing or whatever. I remember, I was like, I don't know, I had to give a 20-minute class, half an hour class, whatever it was. And all of a sudden I started quoting things, not that I necessarily thought of, but where, came out. And then after, I said it, I made a certain inference and expounded on it. I thought about it and I was like, where'd that come from? Where in the world did that come from? It shouldn't have come from anywhere. Doesn't mean I didn't learn it. Doesn't mean I necessarily review it. But it's there. It's part of our wiring. Because it's part of our wiring, we have no idea necessarily when good things come. Good thoughts come out or bad thoughts come out. There might be a pattern. Could very well be a pattern. When a person curses or other things for the sole reason that, something gets triggered. When something gets triggered, then you answer this way, or you do that, or, whatever the case is. But we're wired a certain way. So just like we're recording now, right? And, it's not so far-fetched, as we understand way back when, all these things started happening, being able to listen to music, recording and tapes and, and all that, way back, 8-track, anyone remember 8-tracks, way back. So the Zohar says, at the end of the day, when we're gonna get judged, God's gonna play back everything we've done. So you're gonna say, well, that's a leap of faith, okay? Right? To a certain extent. Maybe it is a leap of faith. But we live in a very weak generation. Tissue generations, we would call it. Teflon generation. Right? Or a friend of mine would say marshmallow generation. That's the generation we live in. So what did God do? God says, fine. You don't want to, you can't fathom it. You're not going to, understand it. How can it be? I know the thoughts of all man, and I'm going to play everything you've ever done in the split second before, when you die. You're going to say, come on. Who can record that much? It's live or Memorex. You remember that, right? So, when it comes to something like that, we know things can be recorded. And it could be for that reason. That, Sony came on the field, came out of the woodworks in order to make tapes, make videos. But it's our benefit. Why? Because now we can rationalize. Now we can see. Just like something like this is tape, which I still have. I'm still working on making them into MP3s. Regardless, they have a purpose. They have a purpose. They record. Because they record, it's not that far-fetched. If we believe in an absolute God and he sees everything and he knows the thoughts of man, isn't it true we can also record everything we do? That's not so far-fetched. Not only that, I'll take it one step further. What about the facts? What about the fact that anyone's had an out-of-body experience? They all tell the same story. First thing they say, Jew or non-Jew. They see their life flash before their eyes. They see everything they've done. Oh, come on, that's a Jewish thing. Not a Jewish thing. Non-Jews say the same thing. Right? It's the exact same thing. So what we do, everything we do is being recorded. No question. Oh, but we're such a weak generation. How is the Abishter, how is God going to put this into motion today? How is he going to show the marshmallow generation? He's going to make tapes. He's going to have man invent tapes. He's going to have man invent videos. He's going to show how it can be done. Now, you could tell me, well, that's very good. That I can understand. But there's a whole nother level to say, okay, God's watching us and recording everything we do. That's a whole different thing. Right? So that's not the topic for now. Right? But I don't think it's such a far jump. Once we understand things can be recorded, why can't an omnipresent being record everything we do? See everything we do. Why not? Why can't he do that? If he's infinite, he can do anything. The only problem is we don't live our lives like this. That's the problem. Either we don't have proper faith, or it's just too hard to think about. Because, we're in the privacy of our own homes, doing our own thing. And we say, well, no one's going to see me. I'll erase the history of my computer. No one will see what I've done. But person knows what they've done. It's also another good example. A person has history on their computer, everything's being saved, unless you don't save it. Right? Similar idea. Right? So we just don't want to live up to that responsibility. That's the problem. And it's a very hard thing. I think it's a good deterrent. I think it's a very good deterrent, in many ways. In many ways, it's a deterrent. But does that stop people? It used to be, you wanted to watch certain things, you had to go to certain places. One thing. Now, person has a handheld device, you can do anything. Anything, anywhere. So what stops us, hopefully, knowing that there's reward and punishment. There are repercussions for what we do. 100%. Now, we should live our lives that way. But you'll say, well, maybe we forget. Maybe we don't pay attention. Maybe a lot of different things. But if we understand what the world's about, we understand how it works every second. Every second we're being watched. Every second is precious. So how could we, God forbid, like Uncle Asa, give up our portion of the world to come for a little bit of fun and for a bowl of lentils? You're going to say, I have to relax. I have to this. I need downtime. We make a lot of excuses. Some people will go to the extreme and say, I'm holding better than most of the world Jewry. Their biggest question is, so I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog. That's where they're holding. So you're going to say, God will cut me some slack, really? And what if he doesn't? What if he says you have more potential than being a potato farmer in Idaho? Right? No offense, anyone's a potato farmer grew up in Idaho. Who cares? We don't care what other people are doing, as we said at the beginning. We don't care what's going on. What other people do, what other people say. Question is, what does the Torah say? And let's make clear as well, God does not care one iota what I think, what any other rabbi thinks. He doesn't care. He wants you to do what he says, period. That's it. You got to do what he says. You understand it better, you understand it worse, doesn't matter. Totally irrelevant. I have to do what I need to do. But to come on and say the majority of Jews don't do what they're supposed to do, and I'm doing more than my fair share. So if you're second in command to the king and you do something wrong, you don't think the repercussions are greater? Of course they're greater. If you're a low man on the totem pole, no pun intended, and you're a ball boy, you're a water carrier, you're the mailman, you think, the king's really going to care? You mess up, depends what you do. But the majority of people are going to mess up, he's not going to care. He's not going to care at all. For one very simple reason, because you're a low man over here. Low man on the totem pole. That's what you are. But the second you now take responsibility and you understand how the world works, that's a whole different ballgame. The repercussions are much greater, and they should be. They absolutely should be. So you say it's a catch-22. I agree. Because if I don't understand, I'm going to be held accountable for that at a certain level. If I do understand better, I'm going to be held accountable at a greater level. You're right. 100%. But the difference is, do I want to live with fantasy? Or do I want the real deal? And if you want fantasy is very easy to find. Very easy to find. Some people will say it's a lot more enjoyable. It's because they never tasted Torah. They've never tasted the taste of what Torah really is. Well, let's not digress. Right, let's get back to the point here. Right, so what I say, I have to be careful. I absolutely have to be careful. Now, if someone is on a higher spiritual level, so what that means is they have to be extra careful what they say. Forget about cursing. Even something that may, for someone else, not necessarily be a curse, a curse word or whatever, for that person it might be. I have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. So, the obvious words we have to stay away from. That's clear. Other things that I would say, as English would say, is a little more dodgy. Things that may not necessarily be a curse, might not be a curse word, but at the same time, person shouldn't say it. If we're dignified, upstanding people, which we all should be, then it's really beneath us to speak in that way. And there are many things, probably shouldn't be spoken about, in public. And, we got to be careful. So, you tell me, I've heard doctors, I've heard lawyers, I've heard others, curse very upstanding people in society. Okay. People could probably bring proofs a dime a dozen. They'll tell me it happens all the time. It's very common. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Right? But it's common. Right? So my answer would be, even if it's common, doesn't mean I should do it. Doesn't mean it's good for me. Right? That's the bottom line. Who says it's good for me? someone would have to be, the ultimate in chutzpah, and tell me how much better a person they are because of the words they use, because of these negative words. I say chutzpah because no one can do it with a straight face. I don't believe someone can do it with a straight face. They can say it makes me so much better by saying this word, that word, the other word. How do we measure things? We measure things based on what God says, what draws me closer to Him. So anything that takes me away from that is never good. And we always mention, if I have a doubt whether I should say it or not, or do something, then I probably shouldn't do it. Unless I ask, a proper halachic authority, what to do. The problem is people don't. They just do things. They just act. They just react. Now, sometimes we have no choice. Something happens, you can't just, okay, let me ask my rabbi what to do now. You're already in the middle of it. It's very hard to do that. Now you can't always do that. But at the same time, we have to envision, and I'm sitting here in a sealed room, so I can say that. If we can envision, God is everywhere. Right? He's even in my sealed room over here. Right? He's everywhere. So how can you not be embarrassed anywhere you go? Doesn't matter where. Right? God is watching every single place. And if He's watching in every single place, how are you not going to be embarrassed? That's one of the aspects of what Gehenna is the fact that God shows us a movie after we die of what we've done. Now, the problem is you can't deny what you've done. See, everything's being recorded. We can't deny that. We could make excuses why our hand was in the cookie jar. That we might be able to do. The reality is probably not so good. If we have a good answer, okay. God will cut us some slack. If we don't have an answer, we're in trouble. Now imagine understanding absolute reality. At that time, the body's not part of the soul, or the soul's not part of the body. You understand absolute truth. And now you're watching this video, all the angels are having fun. They're throwing popcorn at the screen, they're yelling and screaming, having the time of their lives, and you're sitting there feeling like a piece of dirt. That's what a part of Gehenna is. There are other aspects of it as well, but the embarrassment, the ultimate embarrassment of what we've done, right? And we're going to be reminded, or we'll remind ourselves at that point. You'll think of good old Uncle Asaph. I lost exponentially X, Y, and Z because I did this. And then look what it caused over here. And look what this did. Who's not going to burst out in tears, in embarrassment for what they've done? And we're all going to have to do that. We're all going to have to answer. Right? So I'd always say, better to get our heads screwed on straight right now and understand what my obligation is and what the odds are and what we need to do than to worry about it later. Right? Which I heard someone say a while ago. Yeah, the next world I'm not worried about. Said it very flippantly. I'm not worried about it. Well, I think if I were you, I'd be worried about it. You want to hear proof? No. I got great evidence. No, I'm not worried about it. I'm going 6 feet under. And what's the answer to that? I hope for your sake you're right. Because if we're right, person's in trouble. But see, you never do that in anything else. Person had $1,000. And $1,000 by them is worth a lot. We're not talking about someone, mega millionaire here. $1,000. They're going to invest it. You don't think they're going to check once, twice, 3 times who they're going to invest it with? They're going to check the company. They're going to do their research to the best of their ability. They're going to speak to other people, of course. When it comes to eternal life, come on, who believes in that stuff? Fairy tales. Which the answer would be, okay, I have a gun. It's got 6 bullets, 6 bullet holes. I'm going to put 1 bullet in it. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to say, okay, you pull the trigger. 16.6% chance. Anyone willing to take the chance? Play Russian roulette? Probably not. I had a discussion with somebody last week about COVID. We're not going to go into the politics and all that. But, you believe in the vaccine, you don't believe in the vaccine. Most people who get it by a certain age, not going to be affected that much. True. 100% true. Some will have underlying issues, will still survive. Some who don't have underlying issues may die. And it's happened. And it's shown. But the reality is, what's the percentage? I think the numbers are skewed, but it doesn't matter. What are the percentage of people who get COVID going to die from it? They don't have underlying issues. Minimal. Relatively minimal. Now, if that's true, I said to someone last week, I said, if that's true, who wants to get it? I don't think anybody wants to get it. Play Russian roulette. It boggles my mind why people don't care. I'm not going to put that stuff in my body. You don't know what it does. And this. So I know of a number of people. I actually know of one. Right? Someone was telling me about this last week. Person was unvaccinated, got it, was sick for 3 weeks. They didn't have to go. I don't think they were on a ventilator. But they were sick as a dog for 3 weeks. Couldn't work. They couldn't move. Immobilized. Right? Had no strength. Many different things over here that could affect them for years to come. I know, some people had corona that, whatever, have different reactions, months later. I'm not saying it'll ever disappear, hopefully it will. But I'm saying it's just incredulous. In other things in medicine, people take all kinds of precautions. All kinds of precautions. This, I'll play Russian roulette. I'll take the chance. Now, statistically, they may be right. The chance of you getting something much worse, right? Getting it much worse are pretty slim. But you know what? It's pot luck. You don't know. You have no idea how your body's going to react. No idea. So I would say like this, if a person has no idea how their body's going to react, don't you think person take precautions? Some level of precaution? That's what I would think. But the anti-vaxxers will, they'll go ballistic. I'm not putting this thing in my body. Okay. And then when someone gets it, they get it mildly and say, see, look what happened. Nothing really happened. So take the vaccine when, no big deal. Take someone else, could be in their mid-30s, no underlying causes, and they die 4 days later. It happened. You want to take the chance? I don't think it's any different than pulling the trigger on a gun with 1 bullet in it. I don't think it's any different. Now people can disagree. They can say, I believe all the propaganda, blah, blah, blah. Fine. Playing Russian roulette. Who wants to play Russian roulette? Right? Now, when it comes to spiritual matters, people say, come on, you really believe that? You really think it's true? You really think this? Well, you're not giving me proof to say it's not true. Right? What are you telling me? I'm not worried about it. Okay? Have you ever read this on the topic? No. You read the Bible? No. You ever studied Tanakh? No. You ever studied this? No. So what do you mean? Do the research. Get back to me. You don't want to do the research? Doesn't mean it's not true. Totally doesn't mean it's not true. So, just because, as my Rebbe would say, I've never met anyone who's been in that world to come back. Right? I've never met anyone in that world that's come back. So what? But we have enough proof to show why it's true. To show why this Torah is true in many different ways. You don't want to look at the proof? Okay. Right? It's called cognitive dissonance. But, the idea here is what I say matters and affects who I am. I had someone many years ago, curse me out for whatever reason. And using every other, full letter word that exists. Probably made up a few in, in the process. That being the case, that being the case, then I said, you got kids at home. Like, you're not embarrassed. Okay, you have a grievance, one thing. But you talk like a truck driver? You don't think there's anything wrong with it? The person will say, what, are you kidding? Talk the way I want. My kids don't like it, they'll learn. Yeah, you'll teach them to go in the wrong direction. That's what you do. So people do all kinds of, interesting things. Even when it comes to kids, who are the biggest role model to kids? The parents. If the parents do terrible things, it affects the kids. No question about it. No question about it. If the kids do not go in the parents' way, right? What does the Torah tell me? That the kids will pay for the parents' transgressions, only if they go in their way. The rabbis tell us. If the kids don't go in their way, so what happens? Then the curse doesn't apply. But we are products of our parents are, whether we like it or not. We have their DNA. Doesn't mean I have to act on their DNA. Right? But bottom line is, we know there are things that are good for us, that are good for the soul, and things that are bad. And if they're bad, I should stay away from it like the plague. And the reason is because it'll have a negative effect. Even if I don't see it now, even if I don't see it tomorrow, I don't see it the next day, it's there, it festers. Anything that's part of our soul is there. It could be 10 years later, 15 years later, it can come out. It can be triggered by many different things. Stress being one of them. Right? And we say, well, I haven't thought about that in years. Doesn't matter. That's the point. Because of a person, I can't imagine this applies to any of us. But a person's never done anything wrong, it's there. It affects the soul. So you're going to say, so I'm stuck, I'm damned forever. No, that's a Christian idea. What it means is I have to work hard to uproot it. I have to do tshuva, I have to repent. I have to uproot it at the source. When I uproot it at the source, it's a whole different game. It's a whole different ballgame. But I have to keep working on it. Just because I uprooted it doesn't mean it's not going to fester. Doesn't mean it's not going to try and come back in other ways. Okay. Right, but I have to work at that. To work very hard. Any bad character trait. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Musar movement, would say, change one character trait in your life. One! That's already a big thing. It boggles the mind. What do you mean one? We got a lot of character traits we probably need to change. Why is one good enough? He's not saying one is good enough. He said just change one. Right? Mitzvah goreres mitzvah, vera goreres vera. Right? The more mitzvahs we do, the more it causes us to do other mitzvahs. More transgressions we do, same thing. Causes us to do other transgressions. So we have to nip it in the bud. Doesn't mean doesn't mean that I'm always going to do the right thing. Doesn't mean that. Right? But if I have a higher awareness and I understand brass tacks what I'm supposed to do, that's already 90% of the game. That means you're in the game and you're at a high level. Now, the other 10% might be like climbing mountains. It might be like climbing mountains over here. Why? Because the reality is that knowing what to do and doing it, two different things. Two different things. And we don't think in these terms. So we got to change our mentality. We have to look at the world the way God wants us to look at the world. Not what we think. Because again, God does not really care one iota what we think or not. We have to keep what he says. There's a mitzvah to guard our bodies, keep our bodies healthy to the best of our ability. Right? As the Rambam points out. And if, something the body goes awry, right, gets wrecked or whatever, it affects the whole body. Right? One thing, the virus, I don't know, some sort of stomach bug, whatever, it's spreading here. A lot of people have gotten it. Some got it better, some got it worse. Whatever it is. What does it show? It shows a microbe. Look at the damage it can do. I mean, I'm not going to go into all my gruesome details. Thank God I'm up and around. I mean, I'm still feeling a little bit weak, but I had some moments where I was like sprawled out on all fours, and whatever. Not gonna, like I said, not gonna go into detail. But it makes you think. You're in that kind of pain, and there's like nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. And it's created by a stinking microbe. Someone could have coughed on you in synagogue. You got it that way. Could have got it. Who knows? Now I have a grandson that had it, threw up a whole bunch of times, that I was around. So I thought maybe I got it from him, but no one else got it. So I will go figure. You say, you don't sleep enough, you don't this. Could be a number of things. Who knows, right? Whatever the virus, the microbe. One stinking little microbe. That's all it is. Maybe a few. Whatever it is. But, it's paralyzing. It's paralyzing. So, it made me think even more how little control we have. And if God would open our eyes and show us the picture of all these microbes trying to enter our bodies and how he doesn't allow them to do it or whatever. It's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. We don't look at it that way. We take, one of the main things we take for granted is health. We take it for granted until we don't have it. At the same time, people can go all kinds of things, all kinds of difficulties. But the health you need more than anything else. You're right to tell me I need parnasa, need livelihood, need other things. You don't have health, doesn't matter all the livelihood in the world. You can give me Bill Gates or whoever, have billions, not going to help you. The students of the Vilna Gaon were suffering abject poverty. Unbelievable poverty. Every Friday, he sent them to hospitals to visit people, to visit the sick. They came into Shabbos different people. They didn't have very much. They still suffered from abject poverty. But what happened? They looked at the world a little bit different. They said, okay, I might not have a lot of food. I may have the minimal, of the minimal. But you know what? I'm able to get out of bed myself. I'm not in pain. I'm not running to the bathroom every 5 minutes thinking in my language, I'm going to pray to the porcelain god, right? Anyone who knows the analogy won't get gross here, right? And you're not in control. Totally not in control. You feel you're being wrenched, your stomach's being like wrenched, like no tomorrow. There's nothing you can do. You got to try and, stay hydrated. make sure that you don't get dehydrated. I know people that have to go on IVs because of it. They got dehydrated. Thank God, I was able to drink and, eat certain things. So, it wasn't as bad. I mean, come, Saturday night, Sunday, I was a hurting unit. I mean, it was just, until, I took certain medication, fine, finally stopped, but, it's just, how you see, like, how much can the body take, but it's a microbe, right? And it shows beyond the shadow of a doubt, we are in control of zero, right? I would have been happy to control, at that point, either the ability not to throw up or a bowel movement. Couldn't do either. Like I said, I made sure to stay hydrated or, whatever I could do, not make it worse. But, something like that goes on, throws off the whole body. Can't do anything. You feel very weak. You don't think as well. You can't concentrate. Right? So, yeah, thank God for all the well wishers definitely on the mend. Tested certain foods today, see what's going to be. Seems like that part of my stomach virus is, hopefully I beat it. But at the same time, you imagine, you can't, how many days can you go out without eating? Drinking, you only last a couple of days, right? You'll dehydrate and die. Food, you could go, longer, but you feel very weak. I came back from synagogue yesterday. Came back from synagogue in the morning. I was feeling, up to going, even though I was relatively weak. But I went to synagogue yesterday. I was coming home, less than a 5-minute walk. Okay, I had to walk up a whole bunch of steps. Whatever, I had to stop. I mean, I'm not that old. I just had to stop. I was totally out of breath. Whatever, okay. I got out the virus, take its course. But, I tried to do something, earlier today, 2 minutes trying to do it. I go back and sit down or just whatever, week. They say, okay, you can't overextend yourself. You're right. 100%. But one thing for sure, we take these things for granted. You cannot take life for granted. Right? Sickness shows that. Sickness also shows one other thing. Sickness shows beyond the shadow of a doubt, we are not in control. We're not in control. You get people that can smoke 5 packs a day, live till they're 90. You get people that smoke, 2 packs a day, they die at 50. Why is that? Because that's what God did. Don't you think people do all kinds of things? They should die younger, whatever. We're not in control. We have to understand we're not in control. And the mantra is, okay, prayed with a lot of intention today. You're the one in charge. You want me to be sick? I'll stay sick. You want me to be better? You'll heal me because you're the only one to heal. He is the ultimate healer. Also made me think of one other thing. I'm on this topic. We'll keep it clean. When it comes to the body itself, let's say a person, let's say like this type of virus. A person gets the flu. They got a high fever, they can't move. They're incapacitated. Right? Can't barely get out of bed. Feel very weak. What's affected? Not one part of the body, the entire body. Not all illnesses affect the entire body. Some do. A person can have, they can hurt their arm, can hurt their leg. Other parts of their body, okay. Those are different parts of the body. But I was thinking also, this is going to be a kapara for anything I've done with my whole body. That's the Torah outlook. Whatever it was, probably many things. That the whole body gets affected because you did whatever transgression with the entire body, not just with your mind, with everything. With everything. So, I'll take that atonement any day of the week as long as I can survive it, rather than get it later. That's the mentality. It's not easy to go through. But, one thing, definitely one thing, that we learn, that we certainly can learn, from illness, but you don't need, a person shouldn't need to go through something like this as, oh, now you got the message? You sure you got the message? Why didn't you get the message before? Why did you take health for granted? Because we do. Because we don't always think about it. And everything we do should be in mind with what God wants us to do. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, no other questions. I'm going to sign out. Do this every Tuesday and Thursday, God willing. Anyone has, I do this every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, feel free. You can find me on Facebook at Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism or Rabbi Chaim Coffman. Send me an email, Rabbi Chaim Coffman @gmail.com, RBBI, @gmail.com. Again, I want to thank everyone for the well wishes. Hopefully, well on the mend, back to full recovery. Otherwise, I'm going to sign out. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day.